Hello, today I am presenting Unit 2 Demand Analysis. Introduction. Demand is a multivariate relationship. It is affected by many variables like price, income, weather, government policy, taste of consumers, change in fashion, etc. So many variables affect the demand. So demand is affected by many variables. That is why it is called demand is a multivariate relationship. So meaning of demand. In economics, the word demand does not mean the demand in general parlance, common language, okay? Any want or desire will not constitute demand. The demand must be backed by a consumer's desire, ability, and willingness to pay for the good. So desire does not constitute demand. Having desire for some good is not demand. So it is a little bit different from the demand what we understand in general language to that of economic word demand. So demand must be backed up by conscious desire, ability, and willingness. So there must be desire, of course. The departure point is desire, and the desire must be backed up. It must be supported by ability. A poor person's desire to travel by air cannot be demand for the aircraft. So there must be financial capability to purchase the air ticket. Okay, so desire is the first step for the demand, ability is the second step for being demand, and the willingness also must be there to accomplish the demand. So a person's willingness, or you can say readiness, must be there. If these three things are joined together, then the demand in economics is materialized. The term demand refers to total quantity of a particular commodity or services that is purchased by the consumers in a market at a particular price and at a specified time period. So this is the demand definition of demand. Okay, so demand refers to total quantity of a particular commodity or services that is purchased by the consumers in a market at a particular price and at a specified time period. This is the specific definition of demand. The demand consists the following features. So the given features must be included in the demand. So number one is there, it is backed up by adequate purchasing power. So purchasing power or financial capacity must be supported to desire to become demand. It is always transacted at a price, and demand is transacted at a price. So until the price is fixed, demand cannot be materialized. So in order to get the transaction, price must be there. Okay. It is always expressed in terms of specific quantity. So there must be specific quantity to express the term demand. It is always expressed in term of specific quantity. It is related to time. There must be time bound. If there is no time bound, we cannot express the demand, and it is attached to a particular place. So in a particular marketplace, in a certain time period, a specific quantity of goods and services must be transacted at a given price, at a going price. It is called demand for the particular goods and services, and it must be backed up by the purchasing power or capability of a consumer. Utility and demand. Utility and demand is strongly correlated. Utility means want satisfying power of a commodity. If a commodity has want satisfying power, then only a person can make demand for the particular commodity. If the commodity does not satisfy his want, demand cannot be met by him. That is why utility must be there to be demand for that particular commodity. So utility and demand is strongly correlated. No demand, no utility, no demand. Okay. So consumer's demand depend upon the utility that he expects to receive from the consumption of the particular commodity. So in order to be demand, there must be a utility of a commodity from that commodity that a consumer expects to receive from there from the consumption of that particular commodity. So utility is a psychological phenomenon, and utility is an abstract phenomenon because utility of a good varies from person to person. If I have utility, big utility in umbrella, then another person may have very less utility in umbrella. So it is a psychological aspect. So I value much to umbrella and next person value very less to umbrella. So it depends upon the person to person. So it is a psychological phenomenon. Demand schedule. Number A, individual demand schedule. The demand schedule explains the functional relationship between price and quantity variations. So there is a functional relationship, causal relationship between price and quantity variation. It is a list of various amount of a commodity that the consumer is willing to buy at different prices at a particular time. It is a list. Demand schedule is nothing. It is simply a list of commodity that consumer is willing to buy or going to buy at different prices at a particular time period in a specified marketplace. Here is a table. To make the things clear, we can understand, we can see the table here. When the price is rupees 5, quantity demanded is 200 kg. When prices gradually reduces and it becomes 0, or sorry, rupees 1, quantity demanded reaches to the top 600 kg. So when price is 5 rupees, quantity demanded is very less, 200 kg. When price reaches to the bottom, rupees 1, quantity demanded reaches maximum 600 kg. So this is the demand schedule that shows the functional relationship between price and quantity which move in opposite direction. Market demand schedule. The total quantity of commodity demanded at different prices in a market by the whole body consumers at a particular period of time is called market demand schedule. So when we understand individual demand schedule, we integrate all the households individual demand schedule to get the market demand schedule. Like here, we can see the example, one household, consumer A, this is the demand schedule at a particular price. Consumer B, this is the demand schedule for him. Consumer C, this is the demand schedule for him. And when we total A, B, C, 300, 200, 100, that becomes 600. So here one thing is notified that the inverse relationship is not disturbed here. It is established, but the range is little bit different. Like you can see rupees 5 100, rupees 1 500. Okay, means there is inverse relationship between the price and the quantity demanded. Consumer demands 100 kg at 5 rupees, 200 kg at 4 rupees, 300 kg at 3 rupees, 400 kg at 2 rupees, and 500 kg at 1 rupee. That is inverse relationship is established here. In the same way, here also inverse relationship is established. Here is also one inverse relationship is established. And here also inverse relationship is established, but its margin is greater because it is the addition to all these three households consumer. Okay, so relationship 5 rupees 600, 1 rupees 1800 means there is also inverse relationship is established. but the margin, the degree or magnitude of demand is different. We have to be clear on this point. Next is the demand function. The demand function is a comprehensive formulation which specifies the factor that influences the demand for a product. Demand function. It is a comprehensive composition. Okay, that composition of factors or determining factors that influences demand for a product. Mathematically, we can express it as demand for the commodity X. In the functional form, we write Px, Ps, Pc, Ep, Y. So all these are independent variables or determinants. Px, price of commodity X, it affects the demand for commodity X. Price of substitute good, it affects the demand for commodity X. And price of complementary goods, it affects the demand for commodity X. Price elasticity, it affects the demand for commodity X. Income of consumer, and likewise here are the notations. You can see P price of commodity, PC price of complementary goods, PS price of substitute goods, Y income of consumer, EP expected future price, EY expected future income, and T taste and preferences, W wealth of consumer, and advertisement. So all these factors, all the determining factors affect the demand for the particular good that we write in the functional form here in this way. So this is the demand function that we present. Now, determinants of demand. There are various determinants of demand, not a single determinant. Various determinants that affect the demand for the particular good or services. Price of the given commodity. Price of given commodity, price of substitute, future expectation, one determinant. General price level existing in the country, general price level, inflation level, that is the another determinant. Level of income and living standard of people, another determinant. Demographic composition, another determinant. It means in the entire population, what percentage of the old people live there? What percent of the youth live? What percent of children are there in the composition of the entire population that affect the demand? Okay, and taste of the consumer preferences, costumes, habit, fashion, style, they are also determinants. And weather and climate, also determinant. Advertisement and publicity, another determinant. And government policy. All the determinants integrally, separately, or at a time simultaneously affect the demand. These are the determinants. Now, the demand curve. The demand curve is a locus of points showing various alternative price quantity combinations. At what price, what quantity is demanded. You know, that we make a locus of demand, and that is called demand curve. In short, the graphical presentation of the demand schedule is called as demand curve. Like you can see, price to quantity demanded is here. Quantity demanded is here, nearly 5,000, and price $10 and quantity demanded reduced to 1,000. So at price $10, quantity demanded here. At price maybe $9, quantity demanded gradually increases. At price $8, it increases. At price $6, it came to 2,000. In this way, the combination of price and quantity, it makes a point, and when you join all these combination point, that becomes locus, and the demand curve that slopes downward is the locus of combinations of price of the particular good and at that particular price, what quantity is purchased by the consumer, demanded by the consumer, is reflected in this demand curve, which slopes downward from right to left. The law of demand. The law of demand establishes the relationship between price and quantity demanded of a commodity. The law of demand can be explained in the following manner: keeping other factors that affect the demand constant, all other factors that we discussed on the determinants of demand will be kept constant. A fall in price of a product lead to increase in quantity demanded, and a rise in price leads to decrease in quantity demanded for the particular product. So keeping all other factors constant, only relationship between price and quantity demanded is represented in the law of demand. So if other things remains constant, a fall in price of a product leads to increase in quantity demanded, which is called extended, demand extended, and the rise in price leads to decrease in quantity demanded, or you can say demand contracted. So this is the law of demand. Why do consumers buy more at the reduced price? So we can see that at the reduced price, consumer demands more goods. Consumers demand more good because the reasons are product become cheaper, because at the reduced price product become cheaper. It becomes cheaper, so much quantity can be purchased at the reduced price. And next is purchasing power of consumer would go up. If price of the commodity declines, if the price of the commodity decreases, people's purchasing power would be increased. So purchasing power would go up means more quantity would be demanded. Consumers can save more amount of money because their real income would be increased. So real income increase after the price decreases. So the amount of money after the reduction in the price, the real income would be increased. So they save more amount of money. And cheap products are substituted for costly products. And when the products are cheap, then substitute goods are substituted. Costly product of the substitute good are substituted by the cheap product. The operation of the law is conditioned by the phrase other things being equal. This is the condition, this is a phrase, or you can say ceteris paribus, other things being equal. It indicates certain conditions or rule would follow. The inverse relationship between price and demand would be valid only when taste and preferences, customs and habits of consumers, price of related goods, and income of consumers would remain constant. There are so many determinants, all other determinants would be constant, and only the relationship between price and quantity, that inverse relationship between price and quantity, would be expressed in the law of demand. So what are the exceptions then? Exception to the law of demand. Exception means the case where law of demand does not work, like fear of shortage. If there is fear of shortage, then there is no law of demand followed. Okay, if people will fear that there will be shortage in future of the particular good, then they will not follow the law of demand. They will hurriedly go to the marketplace and buy the things in the bulk because of this. So fear of future rise in price. And even in the case of rise in price, if they fear that price is going to be increased in coming days, then they will buy much commodity, much goods. They do not follow the law of demand. And speculation. Speculation means this is a kind of business to earn money by investing some money in the particular product. For example, if you buy gold at the cheap price, you hope to earn more money when the price of the gold rises. That is speculation. So in the case of speculation, law of demand does not hold true. So conspicuous consumption. or consumption of prestigious good. If a particular family feels that family is exalted or very much prosperous, prestigious, then they buy more goods. The goods they consume are of prestigious goods, they demand more goods at the high price. And by having those goods, by purchasing those goods, they feel exalted, they feel respected in the society. In such case, law of demand does not hold true. In the case of emergency, also nobody follow the law of demand. And ignorant people, they do not follow the law of demand. And necessities, if it is the necessity goods of necessity or necessity goods, then law of demand is not followed here. And the stock clearance, if a businessman is going to sell, going to close the business, then whatever the goods are there in the stock will be sold at the reduced price. He does not follow the law of demand. So these are the exception to law of demand. Now, shift in demand. If demand changes not because of price changes, but because of other forces. Other forces means other determinants. Then, in that case, there would be either increase or decrease in demand. Okay. Other forces, other determinants, due to the other determinants changing, uh, due to the other determinants, if the demand is increased or it is called extended, or if the demand is decreased, it is called contracted. Then demand curve shift forward or shift backward. If the demand increases, there would be forward shift in the demand curve to the right, and if the demand decreases, there would be backward shift in the demand curve. If the demand changes because of price, if the demand changes because of price, then in that case there would be expansion or contraction of demand instead of increase and decrease of demand. So if because of price demand is affected, that is called expansion or contraction. But if demand changes not because of price but other factors like determining factors, then it is called increase in demand or decrease in demand. That cause shift in demand. Like you can see here, supply curve, original demand curve. For example, if people's income is increased, if their level of income is increased due to different factors, then at the same price they may purchase much quantity of good. And in this way, if they purchase much quantity of good, the demand curve shift upward, shift forward, and that creates new equilibrium. Then the price level also increases. And likely when the income level is reduced, then this demand curve D2 and another demand curve can be drawn here, D3 also can be drawn, then it may reach here, it means price level may decrease and quantity also decrease to this point. So in this way demand shift, in both cases shift forward, shift backward, both cases are called shift in demand curve. Elasticity of demand. The term elasticity of demand is borrowed from physics. It shows the reaction of one variable with respect to a change in other variables on which it is dependent. Elasticity is an index of reaction. Elasticity of demand is generally defined as the responsiveness or sensitivity of demand to a given change in the price of commodity. It is the degree of change in quantity demanded due to so many factors, determining factors, price, income, and other different factors. So this is the elasticity. It is the responsiveness. Okay. So elasticity of demand is generally defined as the responsiveness or sensitivity of demand to a given change in price or other factors you can say of a commodity. Elasticity of demand refers to capacity of demand either to stretch or shrink to a given change in price. So elasticity it refers that due to price, for example, if demand extends or stretches, it is called elastic demand, and if demand shrinks, it is called less elastic or inelastic demand. So it is the capacity of extension or contraction that is measured in the elasticity of demand. Okay, so simply law of demand is followed in this case, but degree of extension or degree of contraction is measured in the elasticity of demand. So according to Marshall, the elasticity of demand is a market in a market is great or small according to amount demanded much or little for a given fall in price and diminishes much or little for a given rise in price. So kinds of elasticity of demand. There are various kinds of elasticity of demand. Number one is price elasticity of demand. Price elasticity of demand explains the degree of responsiveness of the demand for a product to a change in its price. It is written here in this way: EP percentage change in quantity demanded is divided by percentage change in its price. Symbolically, EP is equal to change in del D and is divided by del P into P upon D. Types of price elasticity of demand. Different kinds of elasticity of demand. Here we are discussing price elasticity of demand and its type. Perfectly elastic demand. Here in perfectly elastic demand, what happens? This is price is measured in this axis, y-axis, and quantity demanded is measured in this axis, x-axis. So here in perfectly elastic demand, what happens? Price remains constant, but quantity demanded increases continuously and it remains parallel to x-axis. This case is perfectly elastic demand parallel to x-axis. It is symbolically expressed as EP is equal to infinity. Okay. And next is here just opposite to perfectly elastic. This is perfectly inelastic. What happens in perfectly inelastic? Quantity demanded remains constant. OQ here it is constant, but price is increasing. Price is increasing or price is decreasing. Whether price increases or decreases, it does not affect the quantity demand. You can say price 1, quantity demanded Q, price 2, quantity demanded Q, price 3, quantity demanded Q. It does not affect the quantity demanded and the demand curve becomes vertical, perfectly inelastic, which is written as EP is equal to 0. EP equal to 0. This is perfectly inelastic case. Relatively elastic. Relatively elastic, it means it affects. Changes in price affects the quantity demanded, demand for the good. But change in price is little magnitude, little degree that affects in demand in more than that change in price. We can say in this case a slight change in price leads to more than proportionate change in demand. It is written as EP is greater than 1. For example, if price is reduced by 10%, you can say, very small space is here, and quantity demanded becomes more than 10%, generally you can say 20%. Suppose this is 10, then this space is double than this, so it is 20%. So in this case, demand curve becomes less pronounced. This is called relatively elastic demand. Relatively inelastic means less proportionate. Not here in more than proportionate, change in 10%, demand, price decreases in 10%, demand increases more than 10%, nearly 20%. Here, less. In this case, a large change in price leads to less proportionate change in demand. For example, price is reduced by 20%, demand increase only by 10%. In such case, this becomes steep. Demand curve becomes steep. Okay, this is the proper relatively inelastic demand, which is EP is less than 1. Symbolically, here EP we can say EP is less than 1. And Unitary elastic demand. Unitary elastic demand is the case where change in price and change in demand is perfectly proportionate, exactly same percentage. Okay, for example, you can see suppose price is reduced by 10%, quantities also increase by the same 10%. You know, this kind of demand, this kind of responsiveness of change in demand to price is called unitary elastic demand. And when you join this, the demand curve becomes rectangular hyperbolic. Symbolically, we write it as EP is equal to 1 or E equal to 1. Okay. So these are the various types of price elasticity of demand and determinants of price elasticity of demand. And what are the determinants of elasticity of demand of price or price elasticity of demand? Then these are the determinants. We can see here nature of commodity. What kind of commodity we are going to buy? It depends upon the nature of commodity and the existence of substitute, availability of substitutes. We can say if the substitute of a particular good is available in the market, then its reaction would be different from that other commodity which have no substitute. Durability and reuse of commodity, it depends upon the durability of the good and it depends upon the reusability of the commodity. Elasticity elasticity is determined by these things and possibility of postponing the use of commodity. And if we can postpone the use of that particular commodity, that means the commodity is not commodity of necessity, so we can postpone. But commodity of necessity like bread, like rice. These are the necessary commodity. We cannot postpone. So these things have very less elasticity. In this way, the level of income of people's income is another determinant of elasticity because people's income level is if it is high, then elasticity of the particular product also becomes high. Okay, because they respond greatly to a great margin and proportion of the expenditure to commodity means a family how much percent does a family spend on the particular commodity that determines the elasticity price elasticity of demand for that commodity because if a family spends 25% of income a family spends 25% of the total expenditure family expenditure on rice then it is a big proportion. So its elasticity would be very high. Okay, so it depends upon the proportion of the expenditure on a commodity. That also determines the price elasticity of demand. Others are also here habits of consumer, period of time, level of knowledge, existence of complementary good like substitute good, complementary goods availability also that affects the elasticity and purchase frequency of a product. Many times, how many times is a product demanded? That also determines the elasticity of demand. Now, how to measure the elasticity of demand? Because we discussed at length our different types of elasticities of demand, then what is the method to measure the elasticity? How do we know what degree of elasticity is there on the particular commodity that must be measured? So particularly there are three methods to measure the demand: total outlay method, point method, arc method. There are three methods. So total outlay method, it is also called as total expenditure method, which is propounded by Alfred Marshall, developed by Professor Alfred Marshall. According to this method, price elasticity of demand can be measured by comparing total expenditure on a commodity before and after the price change. So here, Marshall says that changes in price on a particular commodity is not important, but what important is there in the family budget is that the changes in the particular price its effect would be calculated in the family expenditure. More clearly, the changes in the price of particular good or a basket of good in a household, its effect will be perceived or experienced in the family budget. According to the effect of the change in the price, we can find out what is the elasticity of good for that particular commodity. That will what is the elasticity? Greater than 1, less than 1, or unitary, that can be told by looking the trend of family expenditure on the of a household, not on a particular price of a commodity, but entire goods and services that are purchased by a household. By looking the trend of expenditure and the trend of price change, we can say what is the elasticity of demand for the particular goods. Okay. While comparing the expenditure, we may get one of three outcomes like elasticity of demand will be greater than unity. Here you can see when total expenditure increase with fall in price. If price falls, total expenditure goes on increasing, and decrease with rise in price, the value of price elasticity of demand PED or EP will be greater than 1. If price falls gradually, but in response to this, total family expenditure rises more than proportionately, that is called elasticity greater than unity. So here, rise in price and total outlay or expenditure move in opposite direction. Or means rise or fall in price and expenditure, family expenditure move in opposite direction. But here, when the total expenditure on a commodity remains unchanged in response to change in price of commodity, the value of EP will be equal, and opposite to this, elasticity of demand will be less than unity, EP is less than 1, when the total expenditure, family expenditure decreases with a fall in price. EP is less than 1. Here, more clearly, with the help of this figure, I would like to make it clear. Here you can see price is 6 and total family expenditure is 6. Suppose 6,000. Okay. Price reduced to 5. Family expenditure is increased to 10. Price even reduces to 4. Family expenditure reaches to 12. Means when price is reduced, total family expenditure increased. That means reduction in price and family expenditure goes in opposite direction. In that case, EP is greater than 1. Here, price for expenditure is 12,000 let's suppose, and price is reduced, but expenditure remains same, 12,000. This is unitary elastic, EP is equal to 1. Here, price is 3 and family expenditure is 12,000, and when price reduces even further 2 rupees, then family expenditure comes to 10, and price reaches to 1, family expenditure comes to 6. So here reduction in price and family expenditure moves in the same direction. Here reduction in price and family expenditure moves in opposite direction. Here family expenditure remains constant with the reduction in price. So these are the three types of price elasticity from the total outlay method. So this table also makes the things clear. Case 1 you can say 5 rupees, 4 rupees, 2 rupees. Here you can see family expenditure, total expenditure 10,000, 12,000, 14,000. Means price is reduced, family expenditure increased. That means reduction in price and increase in family expenditure goes in opposite direction. That is called elasticity greater than 1. Case 2, 5 rupees, 4 rupees, 2 rupees. Here 10,000, 10,000, 10,000. Same expenditure. So this unitary elastic. And this case 3, 5 rupees, 4 rupees, 2 rupees. Price is reduced, but total expenditure is also reduced. 10,000, 8,800, 8,400. This is less than unity. Okay. Elasticity less than unity. So these are the three types of price elasticity of demand from the total outlay method. And next method is point method. The point method of measuring price elasticity of demand was also devised by Professor Marshall. This method is used to measure the price elasticity of demand at any given point in the curve. We make a demand curve, and on any point on the curve, if we want to take the measure, then this point elasticity is useful tool. According to this method, elasticity of demand will be different on each point of a demand curve. Thus, this method is applied when there is a small change in price and quantity demanded of the quantity. If we want to measure the elasticity of demand at the negligible change in price and quantity, that we follow point method. Very small, very minor change. If we have to measure, then we follow this point method. According to this method, price elasticity of demand EP is mathematically expressed as price elasticity of demand. Lower segment of the demand curve is divided by upper segment of the demand curve. However, the method of calculating price elasticity of demand depends upon the nature of demand curve. So, what kind of demand curve we have? There are two types of demand curve. One is linear demand curve and next is non-linear demand curve. So in both method we follow the same formula. Lower segment of the demand curve upon upper segment of the demand curve. Same formula. Lower segment of the demand curve, upper segment of the demand curve in the case of non-linear demand curve. Pn by Pn. Here you can see this is demand curve DD, and if we want to measure the elasticity at P, point P, then we have to draw the tangent from here. Okay, at any point, if you want to measure the elasticity at here, at this point, then you can draw the tangent here. Okay, so you must draw the tangent. And then now two segment is clearly seen. This is lower segment PM and this is upper segment. And we have the formula lower segment of the demand, lower segment and upper segment. Okay, PN, PM. This lower segment, this is upper segment. In this way, lower segment of demand curve, upper segment of the demand curve. Formula is same. PN, lower segment is PN and upper segment is PM. So this formula we can see here, we can apply here. An arc method. Any 2 points on a demand curve make an arc. Suppose we want to measure a great changes in the price to demand, then we take the arc method. Then 2 points, we any 2 points on a demand curve make an arc, and the coefficient of price elasticity of demand of an arc is known as arc elasticity of demand. If we measure the degree of change in price, degree of change in demand due to price, then we follow the arc elasticity of demand method. This method used to find out price elasticity of demand over a certain change of price and quantity. Thus, this method is applied while calculating PED when price or quantity demanded of commodity is highly changed. Here you can see demand curve and this demand curve. You can say A, B, C, and A quantity demanded Q1 and B quantity demanded Q2. And if you have to make the elasticity, take the measurement of elasticity, then you follow this formula here. This you have to find out the average price P1 plus P2 by 2, average quantity demanded Q1 plus Q2 by 2. And now formula price elasticity of demand is equal to change in quantity demanded by average quantity demanded whole upon change in price by average price. Symbolically, del Q by Q1 plus Q2 upon 2 whole upon del P by P1 plus P2 by 2. This Q1 plus Q2 by 2, this is the average quantity and this is the average price. We divide change in quantity by average quantity and we divide change in price by average price. So we get to this. Finally, Q2 minus Q1, this is the change, upon P2 minus P1 into P1 plus P2 upon Q1 plus Q2. This is the formula to calculate elasticity of demand from the arc method. So here is the notation. Del Q, Q2 minus Q1, here del P, P2 minus P1, and here P1 new price, P2 initial price. Here Q1 initial quantity demanded and Q2 new quantity demanded. By putting these notations here in the formula, we can get the value of price elasticity of demand from the ARC method. Now, application of price elasticity of demand. So, where is it applied? What is useful? What is the implication of price elasticity of demand? That will be shown here. That is shown here. So, production planning. Suppose you are the producer. You are going to produce goods from your farm. Then you have to plan how much quantity will be produced and how much quantity can be sold in the market. And if you are going to plan the production of your farm, then definitely you have to make a survey of the elasticity of demand or price elasticity of demand. Without price elasticity of demand, we cannot make production planning or we cannot determine the price of the good that you are producing. For example, if you are producing elastic good, the elasticity highly elastic, suppose greater than 1, then you will get uh, you will lose the customer. If you are producing elastic goods, highly price elastic commodity in the market, then if you change the price, suppose if you increase the price, you may definitely lose the customer because there is chance of reacting too much by the customer at the increased price. And if you are reducing price in the same way, customer they may react and they will purchase more goods from the farm, from your farm. So production planning will be made according to the nature of the good you are producing. And in order to find what kind of commodity I am producing or I am going to produce, you have to make a survey of price elasticity of demand. Okay, so it is helpful in production planning and determining price. So if you are producing elastic good, then you must be cautious of determining price. You must be careful of determining price because you may lose the great amount of customers from the market if you increase the price. Okay, and similarly it helps fixing the reward for factor input, means factor payment, how much payment you are going to make to the inputs like wages, uh, and like interest, like rent, all these inputs will be rewarded to the factors according to the nature of the commodity you are producing. If you are producing highly elastic, then you may not be able to pay much. If you are producing less elastic, then you may be able to pay much. So this is the determining application of price elasticity of demand. Help in determining tax rate. Government also determines tax rate according to the price elasticity. Okay, if the tax rate, if government increases the tax rate, then public will buy very less. Government will lose the further income. And if government is decreasing the tax rate, there is chance of getting more government revenue because the price elasticity of the particular product is different in the different commodity. So government must calculate or government calculates the price elasticity of demand before tax rate is fixed. Helps in settling the terms of trade, conditions of trade. You know, by looking the price elasticity of demand, terms of trade, terms of trade between the two parties will be finalized by looking the price elasticity of demand. Helps in declaring public utilities. Public utility, whether the good is public utility or not, will be declared on the basis of price elasticity of demand. For example, government produces different kinds of public utilities. If its elasticity is very less, you know, that is called public utility. For example, we use motor roads, we use railways, that is the public good. Then whether government charges tax uh, and the tax charge is increase or decrease, we do not make any response. we go on consuming the utilizing the public utility. So if the response is very negligible, very less degree, then that is public utility. So in order to find out what is public utility, or whether the product is public utility or not, we have to calculate price elasticity of demand, and its price elasticity of demand is always less in the case of public utility, and useful in determining foreign exchange rate. And foreign exchange rate, forex, is also determined on the basis of price elasticity of demand. I hope I hope uh, you are clear on the topic demand, and more on the next topic. Thank you very much.